Thank you, Gail. I am privileged and I am very excited that Gail and AFN are allowing me to just pay a moment of tribute to Senator Murkowski. From the national organizations, I want to thank you for allowing her to share her time with us. This last year, she was not only honored by the National Congress of American Indians when we had our honoring banquet in the first week in March. She was honored at that time for us for the work that she did as the co-chair of the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs. And in her leadership role that she did in the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs, she led in a bipartisan way that was spectacular. It was for her sheer support that we were able to move forward the Indian health care bill, that we were able to put forward such proposals, legislative proposals to deal with the public safety issues, to deal with the issues having to deal with women and violence, and numerous other issues that she put forward. So I wanted to make sure that the Alaska Native community knows that not only from the Alaska Native community, but from Indian country nationwide, we support her. So we honored her as the very first Alaskan senator or representative to be honored by the National Congress of American Indians. And then just most recently, the National Indian Health Board also honored her and gave her the Jake White Crow Lifetime Achievement Award for her work in promoting Indian health. And so you have a senator that is a champion of not only Alaskan issues, but all of American Indian issues. And we thank you from the bottom of our heart for sharing her with the rest of us. Gunesh Chish.
Good afternoon. It's after lunch. It's after lunch. Good afternoon. Jackie, I want to thank you. Gail, I want to thank you for your words of recognition. I am absolutely honored and delighted to be with you this afternoon at really a family reunion. I've been standing there by the front door. I think it must have taken me a half an hour to get up the escalator, just talking and chatting and being with friends at this incredible community celebration as well as business convention that AFN is. I think we recognize that during AFN week here in the Denina Center, we truly have Alaska's largest Native village, and I want to thank you for the invitation once again to be with you at this great reunion. In so many ways, what we have here with the convention is truly the best of Alaska. It's Alaska's values, it's Alaska traditions, and all you need to do is look through the agenda that you have before you, look through what happens in this building. The Elders and Youth Conference that kicked off the week, we all recognize that it is very tough to live in two worlds, the traditional and the modern. But I think the annual Elders and Youth Conference bridges that gap, and the discussions that take place there ensure that future generations know where they come from. And I think if you have any question or any doubt as to that, all you would need to look to is the example of Willie Hensley and his daughter Elizabeth yesterday as they gave the keynote there. Incredibly inspirational, but truly outlining where you have come from and then where we need to go. Then of course you have the Arts and Crafts Show just downstairs. I think we know, and certainly Alaska is known around the world for the skill of its artists. The best of Alaska's artistic traditions are to be found just downstairs. We should all be doing our part in helping Alaska's artists. and ensuring that they have a productive week as well. I know I'm going to be doing that later. But also the business portion, your annual resolutions process. The issues that are discussed on Saturday morning, we know are oftentimes very difficult, sometimes very divisive, but the debate is always respectful. Your consensus building process is sound, and your decisions are clearly respected. And like you, I do enjoy that business part, but the best part, as far as I'm concerned, is the time that we are able to spend visiting together in the hallways, downstairs in the Arts and Crafts Show. I'm going to be at the convention all afternoon, certainly all tomorrow and tomorrow evening. I hope that we'll have a chance to chat, maybe take a picture, share a laugh, but this truly is such a family reunion. You know, we know that you can't even begin to understand rural Alaska unless you've traveled throughout rural Alaska. This August, I had an opportunity to go out to the communities of Newtok, the community of St. Paul. I'd never visited these towns before. I was very pleased when President Obama's cabinet, several of his secretaries, traveled to the YK this summer. And I'm looking forward to hearing some more that comes from the initiatives that stemmed from this trip. I think we know that these pilgrimages from Washington, D.C. to Alaska are not anything new. I know that as a member of your delegation, I know Congressman Young, Senator Begich, we're always imploring our colleagues and cabinet secretaries to come and see for yourself what we're talking about here in Alaska. It was back in 1969, my late colleague and my friend, Senator Ted Kennedy, visited Western Alaska. He was on a fact-finding mission about Indian education, and he learned much more than he came for, finding the level of poverty in rural Alaska truly mind-numbing. And it's true that living conditions have gotten better in rural Alaska since Senator Kennedy visited, yet the number of Native people who continue to live in third world conditions remains unconscionable. In rural Alaska, we still experience rates of poverty, unemployment, disease, and suicide that simply should not exist in the 21st century America. Alaska Native villages desperately need the infrastructure that the rest of America enjoys, including broadband internet, to create new economic opportunities. As if these challenges were not enough, our Native people must deal with the challenge of a warming Arctic that threatens to push whole communities into the sea. Difficult conditions in rural Alaska have brought many Native people here to Anchorage, and some face difficult life challenges here in the city, like the challenge of urban homelessness, the senseless attack on Native men by 2 young people who had the audacity to put their acts of violence on YouTube. This incident is still fresh in my mind, just as the paintball attacks of 2001. As an Alaska community, we must say never again. We must redouble our efforts to protect the most vulnerable amongst us. When President Obama's team came to rural America, or rural Alaska, they probably viewed it as rural America, they were greeted with a series of issue papers bearing the title Forgotten America in large print. And then in smaller print, he has a Yupik phrase which translates into having a hard time in the moment. And I think that phrase reminds us that there is so much more to be done. Now, on November 5th, just several weeks from now, President Obama will meet with tribal leaders from across America at the White House. And I'm hoping for a strong representation from Alaska at that meeting. And as the first action item, wouldn't it be great if we asked President Obama to travel to rural Alaska, let's ask him to retrace the steps that Senator Kennedy took some 40 years ago. President Obama needs to see what's changed, but more important, he needs to see what has to change. President Obama ran on a platform of hope and change, and I'm looking to our new administration to make the creation of sustainable economies in our Native communities truly a front-burner issue. And while I may have certain disagreements with the President on other issues, it is certainly important to give credit where credit is due. Every year since I came to the Senate in 2003, I've been fighting for a meaningful increase in the Indian Health Service budget. And this year we're going to have a decent Indian Health Service budget. And this is good for all of us. But on a more troubling note, we find ourselves defending against attacks on long-standing programs which are making things better for our Native people. And I would like to spend my time on new initiatives to help make things even better, but unfortunately, a lot of my time is devoted to retaining what we have. The new administration's first budget proposed significant cuts to Village Safe Water and to the Denali Commission. Through my work on the Senate Appropriations Committee, these cuts have been reversed, which is absolutely essential. It seems incredible, though, to me, that we have to fight to keep funds flowing to village sanitation when there is so much work that is left to be done. But fight we did, and we won. Up to $100 million could be available for sanitation projects this coming summer. Now, in the course of this battle and ensuring that these monies are there for Village Safe Water, what we have learned is that some of the money that has been set aside for sanitation in past years hadn't been spent. And this may explain why projects in some of your villages just don't seem to get done. We've been working with Buckland for years now, and the frustration, but that's just one example within one community. But we have identified at least $65 million in unspent money from past years. Now, that's the good news. But then we were faced with the prospect that some in Congress wanted to divert this money, these unspent funds, for their priorities. We educated our colleagues, and they pulled back. We told the agencies to remove the bottlenecks and get the money out the door. And they've got to get it done within 90 days. And we're now finally breaking through this logjam. With all of the focus that we see on climate change, I think you will probably be surprised to learn that we're also fighting to defend erosion assistance to Shishmaref and Kivalina from funding cuts. Now, there are some in Congress who have wondered why the Army Corps of Engineers wasn't charging Alaska Native villages a cost share on emergency erosion grants. And they asked the question, well, why are Alaska Native villages exempt when other communities in America aren't? I think the answer is obvious. We're talking about subsistence communities inhabited by Native people to whom the federal government owes a trust responsibility. The communities, these are communities that are at ground zero from the effects of climate change and communities that lack the resources to pay. So we have managed to turn this misguided policy around. If Native villages can't afford to pay a cost share for emergency measures to address coastal erosion, they won't have to. That's the way it should be. Now, this summer, again, talking about some of the challenges that we face, as you know, one of my colleagues in the Senate took aim at the unique opportunities that American Indians, Alaska Natives, and Native Hawaiians have in government contracting. Senator Murkowski said that her hearing was only about Alaska Native corporations, but everyone knew that the hearing was intended to kill the 8A program for all of America's Native peoples. Indian country didn't fall for it, though. Alaska the Lower 48, and Hawaii were all united in opposition to the senator's plans. Now, at the hearing that was conducted by Senator McCaskill, we took that opportunity to educate, and I think that she learned that the 8A program is one of a few Indian economic development opportunities that has proven successful. So successful that some of the Lower 48 gaming tribes are beginning to look at government contracting as their next significant opportunity. Your interests were very well represented at the hearing. I want to make sure that you know that Julie Kitka, Jackie, Sarah Lukeen, their testimony was powerful. It was very powerful. But yet, in spite of their best efforts, the program remains at risk. I found it deeply disappointing when at the end of the hearing, Senator McCaskill curtly suggested that Native people will have to find another way to obtain redress from the federal government. But I don't accept this. I don't accept this. You don't accept this. This fight to protect your 8A business opportunities continues. I've asked that the Indian Affairs Committee, that they schedule its own hearing on the Native 8A program. We're told that we'll be able to see something hopefully in the near future. But these 8A opportunities are important. They are important to Alaska Natives. They are important to all of our Native peoples. This needs to be a front burner issue when you meet with President Obama. We can't let this opportunity go by. Now, unfortunately, 8A is not the worst example of what we've had to contend with this past year. The cruelest example was what the Department of Defense tried to do to the Alaska Territorial Guard, reduce their retirement checks in the dead of winter. Sadly, 3 of the 26 affected guardsmen have passed on since I first brought this issue to the attention of the United States Senate. Among those 3 is Carl Smith, who's from Hooper Bay. He passed away the end of July. I have a picture of Carl where he is very proudly displaying his U.S. Army discharge certificate. And that picture sat on an easel next to me as I delivered my comments on the Senate floor, speaking about how we needed to act to restore his benefits. How sad it was that we could not restore Carl's pension sooner. I think you all know that the administration opposed our efforts to justly compensate our elders for defending Alaska during World War II, but we overcame that opposition. Your delegation was very, very united in this. We overcame it. A fix for the Territorial Guard is included in the final version of the 2010 Defense Bill. The President has promised to sign this legislation when it reaches his desk. And I'm very, very proud that our nation came together to demand justice for the Territorial Guard. And that is good for all of us. But as we did this, for the members of the Alaska Territorial Guard, it's now time that we make sure that justice is done for all of our rural veterans. For far too long, our rural veteran has been our forgotten veteran. I've been fighting to make VA services available to our veterans where they live, not necessarily just here in Anchorage, but where they live. This year, the VA embarked upon a new rural pilot project to deliver care through community health centers and the Indian health clinics. And I'm told that while this pilot has been rolled out, that rural veterans have been slow in signing up, but there still is time to do that. Now, this is a start, but I'm not going to rest until our rural veterans can get the health care that they have earned at their home, in their region, and at the VA's expense. This is how it should be. But I lay this all out because I ask you to see the picture that we're faced. None of the progress comes easy. It seems that as we take one step forward, somebody tries to push us 2 steps back. But when it comes to your concerns, falling back is simply not an option. That is not how we defend Alaska in the United States Senate. But you know, if you think times are tough now, just think back to the days of Elizabeth Peratrovich, and I know that there has been a wonderful opportunity for that premiere here. But we know Elizabeth Peratrovich as a civil rights leader whose legacy stands shoulder to shoulder with that of Dr. Martin Luther King. And thanks to this magnificent documentary that was produced by Jeff Silverman, it stars Diane Benson, the entire world will now know about Elizabeth too. When Elizabeth Peratrovich came to the Alaska legislature to demand an end to discrimination against Natives, she knew that justice for Native people was not a gift from heaven, but you've got to fight for it every day. And this remains a central challenge for Native people in 21st century American society. Do not ever take for granted that your Native way of life is a gift from heaven. You must fight for it every day, and I know that you do. But if you wonder why keep this up? Why this fight? Think about it in the context of subsistence. If you wonder why we fight for subsistence, just think about the 9-year-old boy from Barrow who harpooned a 32-foot bowhead whale. This young man, Paul Putkotuk, excuse me, he's a master of the video game Guitar Hero. That's something that kids in Washington, D.C. can relate to. But this young man still finds time to pursue the traditional ways. Now that is a real hero. I am in awe of the skill and the leadership of this 9-year-old. And let's remember that his achievement helped put tons of muktuk and meat in the freezers and ice cellars of his community. And what this story teaches us is that subsistence is not just about food, it's about who we are. It's an essential aspect of our uniquely Alaskan culture, transcending generations. When you gave up your Aboriginal hunting and fishing rights as part of ANCSA, you were promised that the state would step in and protect rural subsistence. But history reminds us that that did not happen. So in Anilka, the federal government stepped in to protect your subsistence. But 29 years have passed since Anilka became law. No one would say that the administration of subsistence by any level of government is working well. Now this morning, you've heard the announcement that the Interior Department intends to conduct a review of the federal subsistence management in Alaska, and I think that that is appropriate. Though the rural subsistence preference was established by Congress, the federal subsistence management program was not. It was created by the federal land management agencies. And if that program is not working, it's important for Congress to understand why. Now, back when I was in the Alaska legislature representing an Anchorage district, I stood up for you and I supported rural subsistence. The Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, on which I'm the ranking member, has oversight jurisdiction over Anilka. And as that ranking member, I want to know why. I want to know why rural Alaskans face increasing difficulty putting meat and putting fish on the table. This issue of subsistence is no longer of interest to just those of us in Alaska. The American people are watching how we address our subsistence dilemma, and I'll offer you an example here. Last winter, as you all know, with fuel in short supply, Nick Tucker took to the internet to tell the world that the people of Amonuk were being forced to choose between eating and heating. This was literally a shot that was heard around the world. And not only did it bring donations by the ton to the village, it gave me the ammunition to publicly call out the Bureau of Indian Affairs for why they were doing nothing to help alleviate the conditions. And the Bureau did respond by sending emergency general assistance to the village. Then just a few weeks ago, the New York Times reported on the situation in Marshall. This public recognition goes a long way in persuading the federal government to declare a fishing disaster. Yet we all know that the proud people of Emonic and Marshall would prefer to fish than accept emergency assistance from the federal government. We know that subsistence isn't about welfare. Subsistence is the Alaskan word for work, and it's hard, hard work. I am determined to get to the bottom of why the subsistence management system is not working, and I'm determined that this conversation proceed in a more constructive manner than it did in the 1990s. I don't need to remind you all that Alaska spent a good 10 years debating whether we wanted state management or federal management. We couldn't come to an agreement, and it nearly tore this state apart. Now, 10 years later, we've concluded that neither system is doing a good job of putting food on the tables. And I need to hear from you. I need to understand how we can be doing better. Now, it also seems fundamental to me that Native people should feel safe and be safe in Alaska. I'm appalled by the statistic that a Native woman is more than 2.5 times likely to be sexually assaulted than any other woman. Now, last year, when I stood before you, I told you that I would make the proposed Tribal Law and Order Act more relevant to Alaska. I've included 3 amendments in this legislation that will be included in the bill when it does come to the Senate floor. And these amendments do several things. One, they open up a funding stream to hire new VPSOs. They authorize money to train VPSOs and our tribal police. And they set aside $50 million for a new pilot project to enhance community safety within the villages. We've got another amendment that calls for an investigation into whether the Indian Health Service has allocated sufficient resources to help victims of sexual assault and domestic violence. I think we already know what the answer to that is, but we need this data to help bolster our action. My amendments to the Tribal Law and Order Act also repeal the 2003 appropriations riders that deny tribal courts grants to the Sitka tribe and to the other tribes in the organized borough. Back at the AFN convention in 2003, I told you at that time that I felt that those riders were wrong, and I still think so today. I know that you're all interested in health care reform. This is certainly the issue of the day back in Washington, D.C. We're making progress. I'm pleased to report in reauthorizing the Indian Health Care Improvement Act. You'll recall that the Senate passed that bill in February of 2008. It was a margin of 83 to 10, great bipartisan support, but the House chose not to act on the bill. That bill, not exactly the same, but most of all that we have worked so hard on, that bill has been reintroduced, and as the lead Republican on this newer version of the bill, I'm going to be working very hard with Chairman Dorgan to get that bill enacted. There are 2 things that we need to be watching for, though, when we're talking about the national health care debate that is ongoing. The first thing is that Native people who are IHS beneficiaries should not be required to purchase health insurance if they don't want it. The second issue involves the Indian Health Service budget. There's a fair amount of disagreement going on right now over whether the National Health Care Initiative will save money or whether it will increase the deficit. The President has said that he will cut federal spending if it increases the deficit. And this is where we get a little nervous, because it could mean that board cuts or rescissions in federal programs could have an impact on the IHS. The Indian Health Service budget has suffered greatly from rescissions in recent years, and I think it's fair to say that Indian health needs to be protected from any further cuts. So we're going to be working to ensure that as the debate proceeds, that is addressed. Next year, 2010, marks the 40th anniversary of the Indian Self-Determination Act, and this act sets a new course in the federal government's dealings with Native people. Under the old system, the federal government delivered services to Native people, and you were forced basically to take whatever the federal government offered. If their priorities were off base, or if the service quality was poor, you pretty much had no voice. But under self-determination, Native people deliver the services using federal funds. Alaska Natives have the tools of compacting and contracting wisely. They've used these tools wisely, and you truly have exceeded beyond all expectations. Time doesn't allow me to go down the laundry list of achievements, but I'll just focus on one. The Alaska Native Medical Center has once again won magnet recognition for the quality of its nursing program. It's the only hospital in Alaska to achieve this recognition. This is an incredibly prestigious national honor that puts ANMC on the same par as the Mayo Clinic. This is really incredible and impressive, and we should recognize that. Under self-determination, you set the priorities. You hire the people. You use the employment opportunities to turn your youth into leaders. You purchase locally. You have become important players in the economy of urban Alaska, and this is as it should be. It's no wonder that Alaskans serve in top leadership positions in nearly every major national Indian organization. And it's no wonder that Alaskans consistently win national awards for what you've accomplished in self-determination. The pool of talent that we have here in Alaska is virtually endless, and I can't tell you the pride that I have when so many from our state who have been working so hard on so many of these initiatives come back to Washington, D.C. to gain this national recognition and to stand up in front of leaders around this country and to know that these are friends and neighbors and people from your communities gives us exceptional pride. As your servant in Washington, I will tell you, I take great satisfaction in making the promise of self-determination a reality. And I will continue that fight in the halls of Congress with an energy and a vigor that comes from all of you. And with an appreciation that our challenges, old and new, truly demand creative solutions. In my office, Alaska Natives are not forgotten people. The needs of Alaska villages are not forgotten. And I'm supported by a great staff whose total years of experience working with your communities well exceeds the some 50 years that Alaska has been a state. We've accomplished a lot over these past 6 years. And in the coming years, let us continue to build on these successes for the good of our elders, for the good of our youth, and truly for the good of our state of Alaska. I'm honored to be with you here today and for the balance of the weekend. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Isn't she awesome? I think Jackie
Yes.
said it right.
Yes. Very awesome. I mean, look at the list of the deliverables that we've been able to get from our senator. That makes big differences to our communities, and it continues on. So join me again in thanking her for the work that she does and her representation here.
Well, and of course, we have a gift that we're very proud to present to her on behalf of the AFN board and the delegates. And if Ursula Paniak's granddaughter's here in the room, I saw her. Did she just come in? George Irwin, are you here? Do you have your granddaughter there? I just saw her a minute ago. Well, this is to remind you, when you're back in Washington DC and you're working on the telecommunications bills, about how Alaska Native people were really with the new technology. This is an old lady calling home on her cell phone saying, "I'm done picking berries." Is that cool? It's sewn by a renowned doll maker from Chivak, Ursula Paniak. The skill has been with the Paniak family for at least 4 generations, and here's the 4th generation right here. And she's a doll maker as well.
I'm overwhelmed because I have a connection with the Paniak family. Several years back, it was about 4 years back, I was downstairs, and I'm always captivated by the dolls, and I had a wonderful conversation with Rosalie. And of course, she has passed on now, but she introduced me to her daughter, Ursula, and to, I don't know if you were there at that particular one, but anyway, I had to purchase a doll, and we had a long conversation about the stories behind all of them. And every year since then, I've gone down and I visited with the women from the Paniak family, all 4 generations of them. And last year, I bought a doll from you. And it was your first doll, right? And this is... Give me Jadrin. So I asked Jadrin, what is your doll doing? And it was a beautiful one. She had a little basket and kind of walking. And her doll was just coming back from the post office where she had mailed her permanent fund dividend application. So now I have another collection to my beautiful dolls. For those of you who visit me in Washington, D.C., you know that in my conference room where I have so many Alaska treasures, I have a cabinet with Alaska dolls. And I have 1 row of the Paniak family dolls, so I will add this one with great pride. Thank you. It's beautiful.